All right, moving on to the final segment. We're going to still stay in the world of wrestling, and I'll be sharing my WWE 2007 year review. I'll be going with the positives and the negatives of the year 2007. Now, fun fact, we're nearly approaching 20 years where the WWE faced one of the most controversial years in the company's history. This is actually the first year that I became a wrestling fan and watched on a weekly basis since 2007. So we're nearly on the 20-year anniversary of me being a wrestling fan. So there was some positives and a lot of negatives in this year. One of the toughest years for the WWE actually. So start off with a positive here. A positive would have to be John Cena's WWE title reign. Now, this was honestly the best WWE title reign of John Cena's Hall of Fame career back in 2007. Now, the title reign began late 2006, where John Cena defeated Edge for the WWE Championship in a TLC match in late 2006 at Unforgiven. So the title reign lasted for 388 days. That's the longest that John Cena ever held a world title and one title reign, and it was his best title reign in his illustrious WWE career. But John Cena, looking at it, and he was the MVP of the WWE 2007 that dealt with a lot of injuries, a lot of tragedies, a lot of releases. John Cena was their number one guy, the hero of the company, put the company on his back and never looked back. The franchise player had incredible matches during his title reign with Umaga. Who could ever forget that last man standing match with Umaga at the Royal Rumble? That World Tag Team title reign that he had with the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. The big tag team match that he had with himself and HBK against Batista and The Undertaker, 2 times on the road to WrestleMania. You had the WrestleMania 23 match between himself and Shawn Michaels. You had the Backlash match, one of the best Fatal 4-Way matches in history. John Cena, Shawn Michaels, Edge, Randy Orton for the WWE title. That underrated feud that he had with the Great Khali, the underrated feud that he had with Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. And then it kicked off one of the best rivalries of all time, John Cena versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship. So I think that 380-day title reign was one of the best title reigns that I ever seen. And I think that had to be one of the biggest and the best bright spot of 2007, and a year that faced a lot of adversity. But I think John Cena was one of the best wrestlers, and his title reign was one of the best bright spots of the year. So definitely gonna have to be a positive for 2007. Another positive would have to be the rivalry of Batista and The Undertaker. Now, I think this is honestly one of the most underrated rivalries in the WWE's history. Batista and The Undertaker had a great feud in 2007, and it was so prestigious over the illustrious World Heavyweight Championship. And overall, in singles competition, Batista and The Undertaker, the record, actually, Batista got the better of The Undertaker that year, having a record of 2 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws against the Dead Man that year in 2007. I mean, the feud featured 2 baby faces, 2 fan favorites just fighting to be at the top of the mountain as the World Heavyweight Champion. And Dave Batista did everything to hold the big goal, but The Undertaker did everything just to hold the Holy Grail one more time in his illustrious WWE career. And honestly, a lot of people say 2007 was the best version that we've seen in The Undertaker. And this man was in his late 40s, about to hit his late 40s, and he was still hitting another peak, another stride in his career. But you look at the matches that they had and the build-up they had on the road to WrestleMania, where Batista and The Undertaker were forced to be partners several times, trusting each other, having each other's back. Then you had the epic WrestleMania 23 match. A lot of people believe that was Batista's best wrestling match of his career, and I'm one of those people that believe it. But the great WrestleMania 23 match, the Backlash Last Man Standing match, who could ever forget that steel cage match on SmackDown, where it ended in a draw with both men's feet hitting the floor at the same time, and then the controversy by the end of the night with Edge cashing in on The Undertaker to become world champion. But then you had the Cyber Sunday match between Batista and The Undertaker, where Stone Cold Steve Austin was the special guest referee, and it was Batista who defeated The Undertaker for the first time. Then the final one-on-one match in 2007, where both wrestlers faced each other in Hell in a Cell, was Batista who defeated The Undertaker, but thanks to the interference of Edge. So we're talking about several matches that these 5 matches, all hits, no misses between these 2 respective wrestlers. I think that's the most underrated feud of the year between Batista and The Undertaker. Now, a bright spot would have to be MVP's push. I think MVP's push, honestly, is one of the biggest heels I mean, that heel run in 2007 where he was trusted with the United States title. He was trusted to be one half of the tag team champions with Matt Hardy. I think that push was one of the best pushes that we've seen in 2007. And that year he had feuds with Chris Benoit, Ric Flair, Matt Hardy, Kane, Rey Mysterio for the United States Championship. I think that was one of the best bright spots that we've seen in the year with MVP's push. And the last positive I'll go over that year will be the Age of Orton. The Age of Orton, you finally see Randy Orton become a world champion again. He was the youngest world champion in the company's history and became world champion and back in 2004. But after his first world title run, he wasn't trusted with the title again. And they put faith in him winning the WWE Championship after their ace John Cena went down with an injury that would put him on the shelf for months. So they took a gamble on Orton, but it paid off in the end. But over the year, he had the Rated RKO tag team run with him and Edge. They started off the year as World Tag Team Champions. He took out Shawn Michaels. He took out Rob Van Dam. He took out Dusty Rhodes. He took out John Cena's father with all these devastating punts. And the Age of Orton, he became WWE Champion once again once John Cena became injured. But then the Age of Orton, him becoming WWE Champion late 2007, opened the door for Randy Orton to have one of the best runs of all time. So you got to credit that. Negative, and this one still talked to this day. You would have to say one of the biggest negative of 2007 would have to be the Chris Benoit death. Now, one of the greatest in-ring talents of all time, the death and the tragedy is still talked upon this day with Chris Benoit suffering from CTE before he took his own life and his family's life. And honestly, the way how everything played out, like I can still remember it growing up. Like he was supposed to wrestle Chris Benoit was supposed to wrestle CM Punk for the ECW title at Night of Champions, and he never showed up to work. And that left a lot of fans, a lot of employees in the company. They were just questioning where Chris Benoit was. Then the news broke 24 hours later. They did a whole tribute to him the next night on Raw. And if you guys remember at the time, Vince McMahon, who faked his death via storyline with the explosion of the limousine 6 days prior, had to completely forget about the storyline and address the death of Chris Benoit. They had a 3-hour show for him. And then once the details came out, another 24 hours later, where he took his family's life, took his own life. He was never supposed to be discussed in the company's history ever again. Anything that had him, anything that had Chris Benoit's name mentioned with the company, it was forever erased at that point. And honestly, it left a lot of fans viewing the sports entertainment world as a place where it was just a shit show. Like, you had wrestlers coming up with positive steroid tests, CTE tests. Like, it was just that travesty right there. It just left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths for the sports entertainment. And honestly, that's why they went from PG-14 to the PG era based off of the term events that they went through in 2007. But that one was the icing on the cake as the biggest negative in that time frame. Another negative would be the injury bug. Now, the injury bug in 07 was just all over the place. Like, you had top stars like Triple H, Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, Edge, The Undertaker, John Cena, Booker T, Mr. Kennedy. All these guys missed time due to injuries. And the WrestleMania 23 card was missing a lot of main event talent. Like, Triple H wasn't part of the card because he tore his quadriceps in January. Rey Mysterio was out of action. There was no well, Edge was on the card, but there was a lot of other names that were still on the injury reserve list for the WrestleMania. The main event scene was so messed up in 2007. It got to the point where the Great Khali was the most credible heel and was the world heavyweight champion. So the fact that SmackDown seen all this happen, and then the injury bug just all over the place, all the injuries, they've spent a lot of time not having their top tier names, and it even got to the point where John Cena, their ace, had to vacate the title and looked like he was going to be out for 4 to 8 months, but then had that miraculous return like 3-4 months later back in the day. But the injury bug was just all over the place and haltered and derailed all the plans that they had in 2007. But they still made it work somehow, some way. But the injury bug, you have to say, was one of the biggest downfalls. And the last one had to be the questionable Vince McMahon booking. Now, 2007 was probably like the most bizarre year if you look at it booking wise, because this man booked himself to win the ECW title, right? After the billionaire versus billionaire match between himself and Donald Trump, where Donald Trump had Bobby Lashley representing himself, then he had Umaga representing himself, and the billionaire whose wrestler lost had to shave their head. And of course, that was Vince. He won the ECW title. It was just a slap in the face to Extreme Championship Wrestling at that point, and he killed the brand officially. He killed the brand before the brand was out and extinct permanently. But that was a strange booking decision. If you guys remember, the Cruiserweight division completely died that year, where Hornswoggle won the title, and then they made him vacate the title because it was unsafe for him to defend the title, and then the Cruiserweight division just vanished for 9 to 11 years. And then the adopted son of Hornswoggle, being Vince McMahon's adopted son, like, '07 was just a mess. I mean, it had a lot of bright spots, but a lot of negative spots as well, and honestly put the company in one of the most uncomfortable situations in wrestling history. And that year will stand the time as one of the most strangest and difficult times in the WWE's time frame. But that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off, and I'll see you guys on next week's episode.